It is my pleasure to welcome you to our 2019 Legislative Breakfast. My name is Dr. Ray Comiskey, and I'll be your moderator this morning. We're coming to you on KGF Radio, and today's program will also be available on JCTV and via the web on our Jefferson College Facebook page, Vimeo, and mymoinfo.com. Before we begin our program this morning, let me take a moment to recognize our sponsors for today's breakfast: Govero Land Services, Comtree, Dobbs Tire and Auto, Mercy Jefferson, Enterprise Bank, Fortune Bank, Jefferson County Community Partnership, Debbie Dunnigan, Recorder of Deeds, and Sheet Metal Workers International Association. Let's give them a round of applause. Before we begin our program this morning, it's sometimes helpful to have a good perspective about our political process, our laws, and of course, our lawmakers. So here's a few lighter, I hope, lesser-known legislative facts. Johnstown, Pennsylvania was devastated by floods in the late 19th century and again in 1936. That led to the state of Pennsylvania passing a tax on alcohol, the proceeds of which were used to rebuild the city. By 1942, enough money was raised to rebuild Johnstown, yet the tax exists to this day and brings around $200 million a year for Pennsylvania. Just a thought, guys. Pittsburgh has a 5% amusement tax on anything that offers entertainment or allows people to engage in entertainment. States like Iowa, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey exempt pumpkins from a sales tax, but only if they will be eaten and not carved. I don't know how you prove that. Kentucky levies a sales tax on thoroughbred stud fees, whether the horses are in the Derby or not. And finally, despite marijuana being illegal on a federal level and in most states, many states impose taxes on the sale of marijuana. In 2005, Tennessee began requiring the drug dealers to anonymously pay taxes on any illegal substance they sold. Successful program, I'm sure. Tennessee also has a tax on all litigation for the amount, and the amount varies on a case-by-case basis, but it can be as low as $1 for parking violation cases. The tax tends to discourage frivolous lawsuits. So that's just something to think about. So with those facts in mind, let's turn to something more serious. We're here today to hear about the work of our our legislators do on our behalf. Legislators were busy this year. The General Assembly saw 914 pieces of legislation filed, with 95 bills being truly agreed to and finally passed. Governor Parson has signed several bills, including the budget bill. He has until July 14th to either sign or veto the remaining bills. All legislation passed by the General Assembly, if signed into law by the governor, will become effective August 28th, unless the legislation provided for a specific effective date or contained an emergency clause. If the governor takes no action, the bill becomes law. So that summary brings us to our program today. As always, I'm pleased to say firsthand that our legislators work well together and work hard on our behalf. So it's now my pleasure and privilege to invite members of the Missouri Legislature from Jefferson County to give us their perspective of the 2019 legislative session. Today we'll begin with the Senate, and we're happy to welcome Senator Paul Wieland.
All right. First off, I want to thank you, Ray, and thank the Growth Association for putting on this forum. It gives us an opportunity to talk to, you guys without necessarily going through mail or email, more personal, face-to-face kind of time, which is important. One of the first things I got here, I checked out the agenda, and I've been coming to this quite often, as you guys, if you're regulars, you know this, and I seen that I was the first up to bat. And I have had, I told Representative McGurl, I had that opportunity to be the last guy up to bat before. And the bad thing about that was that day I came with 10 things I wanted to talk about, and as I sat there, I just slowly started scratching every one of them off. So I asked all my colleagues here, what are you going to talk about, so I could do that to them. But I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to try to keep my remarks brief because I do know we have a lot of people here to talk about a lot of things. I thought I'd take my time to focus on kind of what I do as chairman of insurance and banking, kind of give you a report from that committee. We had 43 bills referred to our committee this year, and of those we had 31 hearings. We had 31 hearings. We had 31 Senate bills and 12 House bills. We ended up voting 25 of them out of committee, and 5 of them were what we call truly agreed and finally passed. That means we sent them to the governor. And of those, the 2 the governor's already signed. I was able to get one bill through this year. I got some amendments on other stuff, but my main bill that I got passed this year was Senate Bill 414. And what it dealt with, it sets up a task force so that Missouri can set up a 1332 Innovation Waiver Task Force. And to give you an idea, if you haven't never heard of that, when the Affordable Care Act was passed way back, well, we're going back 8 years probably at least now, there was provision in there that allowed the states to apply for a waiver, innovation waiver, and if they got that, they could, as long as they stayed within the parameters, they could create their own healthcare system within their state. Not many people took advantage of that during the Obama years. After that, people started taking advantage of it. And it's kind of interesting, the states that took advantage of it weren't necessarily the ultra-conservative states. A lot of the states were what you might call more liberal states. But we've had 7 or 8 states that have gotten waivers now, and they've had them for a couple years, and they found out that some of them have saved up to 40% on the premiums, the insurance premiums that their citizens in their state need to pay. So me and Representative Hill from the House have been working on this for a couple years to try to get Missouri in position to get a waiver. And so we were able to get the task force passed this year. What it does is it allows there's like 17 people on the board. Some are appointed by the governor, some are appointed by the speaker, the pro tem. And it's a mix of people. We have people from insurance companies, insurance producers. We have Senate and House members. We have representatives of hospitals and doctors. We even have interests of consumers, a representative for the interests of consumers. But our goal is to meet and to create a waiver application and then give that to the governor. Hopefully the governor will apply for that and we'll be able to get a waiver. It's kind of, and there again, we're fortunate we're more near a metropolitan area, but there are counties in the state that they only have one provider as far as an insurance provider goes. And those providers struggle each year to commit to provide that insurance again. So it is something that is kind of a crisis here in Missouri that we need to address, and hopefully we'll get that done, like I said, after we get the task force meeting. Other than that, that pretty much is the bulk of what I want to talk about. The only thing I might mention is Senate Bill 291 passed this year, and I don't remember, but last year I was able to put an amendment on a bill that allowed for the prepaid tax on cellulars, that money to come back to Jefferson County for the use of a public safety infrastructure. As we all need, there's a great need for a jail and a new courthouse. And that had a 4-year sunset. So this year we were able to remove that sunset. So Dennis and the council will be able to know that they've got that money coming in for a longer period of time, and maybe it'll give them an opportunity to get some kind of bond with that. It's not gonna build the whole courthouse, but it is something that hopefully will help the cause and move in the right direction. So with that, I'm not going to talk anymore and let my colleagues have a chance to tell you what they've been up to all year. I want to thank you again for being here this morning and your interest in good government. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you, Senator. We now turn our attention to the House of Representatives, and we'll begin with Representative Elaine Gannon.
Well, I was going to say the exact same thing as Senator Whelan. I remember being at the bottom of the list, and now I'm at the top of the list. Time has just flown. Good morning, and I would like to thank Dr. Kaminsky and Jefferson College, as well as J98, for hosting this legislative breakfast, which is always a great event every year. It's hard for me to believe that this was, I just finished my 7th year. I will term out next year, and it has truly been an honor to work with the constituents in my district, and even those that come to Jefferson City to visit with us and tell us their concerns. And it's been an honor to serve them and the people of District 115. As was said earlier, the 2019 legislative session was one of the most productive sessions in passing bold policies that will have a dramatic impact on all Missourians. We made it our priority to move forward by enacting meaningful legislation that will build a stronger Missouri. As one person said, and I quote, "We embraced innovative ideas to tackle today's and tomorrow's challenges by delivering on our commitment to develop a strong workforce," and we did, "create jobs," and we did, "protect our values," and we did, and provide opportunities for Missourians to achieve the American dream in the state we love. Last year, I passed a bill called the HISET bill, and it replaces the GED in the state of Missouri. The HISET is cheaper than the GED. The tests are very similar, and Missouri chose to go with the HISET. This bill will allow any student who has dropped out of school for whatever reason, junior, senior, and then, they think they're gonna go out and conquer the world, and then they find out that they can't find a job, and at age 23, they're couch surfing, they're living with friends out of cars, in parks, and on benches in their community. So this year, the money was put in the budget, and the governor approved it, to allow for all first-time test takers of the HISET to take the test free. Now, if they do not pass the test, then they have to pay to take it a second time. So I was excited that the funding was put into the budget, which will allow these former students to take the test, pass the test, and hopefully move forward with their life in whether it's through a trade school or a community college, and then on to a university. Let's see, where am I going from here? Let's go, okay. Representative Coleman is not here today, and I really thought she would be, but I understand that she had another commitment out of state. And she carried House Bill 126, which was known and called the Heartbeat Bill. It's the Missouri Stands for the Unborn Act. And this bill passed. The governor signed it into law. And I know everybody in here has heard about it because it was in the media every day. So I'm not going to go into detail on the bill. I'm kind of going from a different direction here. Some of you have been in Jeff City and you've witnessed what takes place on the floor, and some of you haven't. But I just want to tell you about my most memorable day on the House floor in my 7 years in the General Assembly. And that was back in, I believe, February, when House Bill 126 which I think there were 3 handlers, and Representative Coleman was one of them. But it was the day that this bill was brought to the floor, House floor. We knew ahead of time that the bill was coming that day. It was discussed in caucus. And so once session started and the bill was brought forth, we spent 3.5 hours on the floor on just this one bill. Now, a lot of times issues become very heated, such as labor issues, right to work, education. Oh my, education is such an emotional bill and can become very controversial when it's brought to the floor. So this was a little bit different. The Speaker, Representative Haar, he was very kind and generous to allow everybody on the House floor to speak that day. Now keep in mind, we were there 3.5 hours, so just picture this. It was so emotional, yet everybody managed to keep their emotions intact in that there were no outbursts, there was no screaming, there was no fighting. It was very emotional. There were tears. There was crying. And Representative Rob Vescovo, our majority floor leader from Jefferson County, he kept the floor under control the entire time, and I'm just going to give a shout out to Rob. He is just an amazing majority floor leader, does a great job, and those of us sitting up here that work with him, we are so proud, along with other members of the General Assembly across the state of Missouri, that he is our majority floor leader. So back to the bill. So when it was all said and done, I will say this, the Republicans were very respectful of the Democrats across the aisle, and the Democrats were very respectful of the Republicans across the aisle. And when it was all said and done, and you could hear a pin drop, the speaker gavelled us out. And again, you could hear a pin drop as everybody left the House floor. It was amazing. If you've not had an opportunity to come and view what goes on the House floor, try to set aside some time and come up and visit us and see what happens, and bring your kids. It's wonderful when the kids come and we have the opportunity to use our LAs to take your kids on a tour of the Capitol, and I guarantee you and your family will have a great and memorable day. I just want to tell you what the best thing was that happened this year during our session. My husband Dennis and I became grandparents. For the very first time. It was about time. Our oldest son Andrew, that lives in Dallas, Texas, he and his wife Christine gave birth to our first grandchild and grandson, and his name is Wyatt Michael, and I've had the opportunity to spend overall close to 3 weeks down there, and plan to come back in the near future, And so with that, I can say that we are truly blessed, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Elaine, and thanks, Wyatt, to wait until the session was over to come along so you could finish up. So, we used to alternate Democrat and Republican. We don't have that challenge anymore, so now we're going to go male-female. So now we will ask Representative Dan Shaw to come forward.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to Ray for his hospitality here at the college and the Jefferson County Growth Association. I think Senator Whelan mentioned the number of bills that we passed this year, 95 TFAP, truly agreed, finally passed. That's not a lot of bills, but I think they were all good bills. The interesting thing is, in Jefferson County, we have 7 state reps and 2 senators. That's 9 out of 197. And we probably, in the delegation from Jefferson County, passed over 10 of those 95. Not only did we just pass 10 of those that we were actually involved with intimately, either we were the sponsor for a Senate bill, or the House sponsor for a bill. We also, whether it was Senator Whelan, Senator Romine, or any of the reps that are here today, or the ones who aren't also, we were intimately involved with lots of that, from Representative Vescovo as the floor leader, down to Representative Ruth as chair of transportation, Elaine Gannon as vice chair of education. We had a great impact, and you should be proud of my colleagues up here for what they did. And with that, I'd like to congratulate them all for a great job. We talk about workforce. That was one of the governor's main goals. We want to make sure we did workforce. And we did a very good job on that. What I think you ought to pay attention to here at Jefferson College, we learned this the other day at the chamber meeting, was that they have the CAMO program where students can come here and get involved with the trades. The kids who aren't involved, who aren't ready to go to college, or that may not be the path for them, they can come here and get credit for also taking care of doing their apprentice training as well. It's a great program. I think it's called CAMO. Make sure you look at that. And I think it's great for us to recognize how much workforce development is going on, not just at the college here, but in Jefferson County. We're trying to make sure all the students are ready for whatever they want to do when they get out of high school, whether it be career or college ready. And I think we have several of the educators here today from the schools, and I think they should be congratulated for their hard work. Of those 95 bills, and I talked about how Jefferson County, I was responsible for 2 of them. I had the House companions, but as the Senator will tell you, Senate bills normally take preference over the House. We get pushed to the side as Senate bills move.
Sometimes.
Most of the time. And I'm okay with that. I was involved with 2. One was an agriculture, kind of an omnibus bill. An omnibus may sound evil, but it was actually a very good bill. It started off as taking care of retailers and being able to do fines instead of just suspending their egg license. Sounds like a minimal thing, but it actually became quite a bill. It also dealt with agriculture fees to make sure the Department of Agriculture remains self-sufficient and basically got their fees to where they should be to take care of the services that the Department of Ag still needs to maintain without dipping heavily into general revenue. And we also did a banking bill that took away the ability for banks to double dip on tax credits, but also made sure that they weren't paying taxes in 2 ways on taxes from interest from the Federal Reserve. Very exciting stuff, let me tell you. But it was something that we needed to do. When we started this morning, Dan from the Jefferson County Growth Association talked about their program, One Voice, or One Plan, One Voice. And he talked about how the association has to hear from its members. We as legislators need to hear from our constituents as well. And I would like to echo what they talked about. Make sure you tell the club here, the association, what you want to see out of them, but also make sure you communicate to us on a regular basis what your needs are. That way we can make sure we represent you every day in the Capitol. And with that, we've heard about all the products that are made in Jefferson County. There's several of them. The Lieutenant Governor, 2 years ago, when it was Lieutenant Governor Parsons, created a Buy Missouri program. I helped pass a bill last year that made 3rd week in October the Buy Missouri Week, and it focuses on products made in Missouri. Anything from a Craftsman toolbox made in Sedalia to all kinds of products, and I'm drawing a blank right now, but all kinds of products that are made here in Missouri you can find either in your grocery store or other places. There's a website, buymissouri.com. Make sure you go out there, and if you have a product that's made in Missouri, make sure you get it on there. It's a very useful tool, and you'll see that become more and more of a project, not only for the state of Missouri, but also I think Jefferson County will do well and help increase our sales tax revenue here that we talked about earlier this morning. And I should have a lot more because we can't leave Mike McGurl anything left because he's the last. But since we went a little bit out of order, I'm going to charge Representative Ruth with taking the rest of Mike's talking points so that he has nothing, and we'll go on. But I want to thank everyone for being here. Ray, thank you again.
And so my apologies to Representative Ruth. I can't read a list apparently. And before we move on, you're listening to the 2019 Legislative Breakfast put on by the Jefferson County Growth Association on KJF Radio. You can also catch us on JCTV, mymoinfo.com, and the Jefferson College website. All right, we will continue on now with Representative Becky Ruth.
Thank you. This going third actually presented me with more opportunity to scratch more things off of my list that I didn't have to talk about. Pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the College, Jefferson County Growth Association, and KJF J98 Radio, and all of the sponsors for making this possible today. We always enjoy coming and talking to you all, let you know what we've been doing, or at least trying to do in the legislature. It has really been my honor this year. This year I was named the first woman ever chair of the House Transportation Department. We did a little bit of research and found that since the inception of this committee, there had been never a woman that had ever served as chair, so that was quite an honor to become that. It was also a challenge, but it was a good year for transportation. When the governor came out and said this is his priority, infrastructure, transportation is one of his main priorities, I knew I had my work cut out for me, and I wanted to make sure we got as much done as we possibly could. I was very happy this year to actually get 5 pieces of legislation across the finish line. It was not an easy session to get legislation across the finish line, as you heard the representatives before me talk about and the senator. I sponsored HCR 26, which is our bonding proposal. We had the Senate version, SCR 14, which is what eventually passed. We made my language identical after they changed it a little bit in the Senate. When it comes to transportation, I can't think of a single career or area that transportation does not touch. We all use our roads, highways, we go over those bridges. Our kids get transported to school. Our families drive over them to go on vacation, and you all use them to go back and forth to work. So making sure that our roads and bridges are in good shape was a priority and will remain a priority. This year we did get the bonding proposal passed. The bonding proposal will take care of a total of 251 bridges in our state. What a lot of people don't realize is while Jefferson County only has 1 bridge on that list, that's actually a good thing because that means our bridges are still in good shape. They're not deteriorating as badly. Eventually it's going to come down to a time when we have to start replacing some of those bridges. But it's good that we've been able to maintain and take care of those bridges here and that they're not on the worst of the worst bridges list. Now, within 10 years, that could all change, so we've got to start looking towards the future, and that's what SCR 14 actually did. It did get changed to where the bonding proposal for all of those bridges is going to be triggered by an INFA grant. We have applied to the federal government for an INFA grant to help fix the Rocheport Bridge. And you guys might be saying, well, wait a minute, Rocheport Bridge is not here in Jefferson County. No, it's not, but it's one of the main thoroughfares in our state. It's on I-70, it's up in Boone County. A lot of freight passes through our state. Even freight that's moving up 55, it's going to eventually turn on I-70. And, you know, going from Chicago all the way to Kansas City, this bridge is important to our whole nation. And when that bridge goes down, we could be looking at backups for hours and hours and hours. So we had a situation where we either repair it, and it's only going to last a short amount of time, and it's going to block traffic, or we try to come up with the funds to replace it. So the INFA grant will help give us those funds to replace that bridge. So we're hoping to hear about that sometime this summer. We'll be looking to our congressional colleagues to help us get that INFA grant into place. I know I personally have already written a letter to the USDOT, to Director Chow, asking to get this INFA grant put in place. And why this is important for Jefferson County is the other bridges that are already on that STIP, on that 5-year plan, that are included with this bonding proposal will get fixed. That means they're going to move off of the STIP. That's going to now allow for other road projects to be able to be done. And I know we all care about 55. How many of y'all would like to see a 3rd lane on 55 from Peevely to south of Festus? Because every day, trust me, I can see 55 from my house. And I know what that is like when there's an accident, and those accidents occur in that stretch. So that's one thing that I am working towards, working with our county officials, working with our local city officials, and with our state officials. And we are making the plea to have that project moved up onto the STIP and to get that funded and to try to get that 3rd lane put in there. In addition to that bonding, we set up a huge, I don't want to say precedent because a lot of people don't want to hear that word, but for the first time we put money from general revenue into our road fund. We put $50 million in there. That's also part of that bridge package. It's going to help take care of some of those bridges. We also put another $50 million in the cost share grant, which is a 50-50 match. Some of the legislation that I passed this year, my House Bill 6, besides the language for the bonding, was my House Bill 626. That actually cuts red tape, allows our rental car businesses to be able to run more efficiently. How many of you love going out and renewing your license plates? Brian. Okay, that's not something we really like to do, but could you imagine trying to do that for 17,000 cars? Our rental car companies in our state have to track their cars down in other states because Enterprise is a company that's based right here in Missouri. And they have to track all of these cars down because they're registered in Missouri. They could be in California, Minnesota, Louisiana, and they got to get those little stickers on those cars. Very difficult process, lots of red tape. So we actually changed that this year so that they can register as fleet vehicles. We are not losing money by doing that either. It's bringing some money in. They're going to pay a registration fee, and they are more than happy to pay that registration fee, the application fee, to be able to register as a fleet. In addition, they're going to be paying $36 per vehicle. Your average cost for a vehicle is $24. So we're going to realize a little bit of income from this program, and we're going to help cut red tape and allow our businesses to operate more efficiently. That language was added on as an amendment to 3 different bills. I got it on Senate Bill 368, Senate Bill 89, and Senate Bill 147. So I think it stands a pretty good chance of becoming law and the governor signing it. And by the way, the governor did already sign the SCR 14. He signed that at the time of the budget signature. So SCR 14 is law. My other bill, House Bill 570, what that does is allow our school districts a little bit of flexibility when it comes to makeup days. Many of our school districts have one-to-one now, and they're using a lot of technology. This would allow them to make up 36 hours using that one-to-one technology for the kids at home. They can be doing those assignments. For the school districts that don't have the one-to-one, they can do packets, so we put that provision in there too so it can affect all school districts, and they can make up 36 hours now through their virtual program or through the packet. It is a stringent process. They do have to have their program submitted to DESE. DESE has to approve of that before they can ever do it. We've put things in there to make sure that kids on IEPs and everything else are taken care of and that they can also participate in the program. Since our school districts have gone to hours instead of days, and that's why we went with the 36 hours. That is in House Bill 604, which is kind of our omnibus education bill this year. I also did House Bill 841 this year, and that was with a lot of help and thanks to Senator Whelan. House Bill 841, most of you know Adelaide Hertog, or have heard about her and her journey with DIPG. And we lost Adelaide to DIPG, and Adelaide's mom came to my office, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to say to this grieving mom? I just, heartbroken. I don't know how I'm going to be able to help. I want to help some way. And she came to my office and asked if I would be willing to do an awareness day for DIPG in our state. I said, absolutely. So once House Bill 266 is signed, we will have DIPG Awareness Day on September 9th, which is Adelaide's birthday, and September is also Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And we put Adelaide's name in the bill as well. So Senator Whelan helped us by getting that added on in the Senate to House Bill 266. So we thank him for that. I did not have a standalone bill for this, but most of you are aware of what's been happening with our license offices and the fact that our Twin City Area Chamber of Commerce lost their license office in the bid process. I added language into Senate Bill 147, which will, I think, give a fairer advantage to our local people who want to operate our license offices. Rather than our license offices being operated by some company that comes into our state at the last minute and hurries up and files a business license and then makes a bid and ends up winning that bid because they say they're going to do all of these things and don't necessarily do those things. So we're giving an advantage to our local folks, whether it's a not-for-profit or somebody local operating our license office. If you live within 35 miles, if the person applying for that, you're gonna get 20% of the total points possible. If you live between 36 and 70 miles, then you're gonna get 10% of the total points possible. If you live over 70 miles, you don't get any extra additional points. So we want to bring those back here to the people we know. Twin City License Office, they did a lot with the chamber, they did a lot for our local people with scholarships and the things that money went back into the community. And we want to see that continue to stay there. So hopefully that language will end up getting signed. The other language that I worked on was some port language. Representative Patterson actually passed that, helped him with that, Chapter 68 bonds for our ports to allow them. It's a little bit of an economic development incentive tool. So right now our ports are supposed to be tax exempt. They're a political subdivision. That hasn't been happening all around our state. Some assessors have been going out and trying to force our ports to pay taxes on their stuff. So Chapter 68 bonds is just pretty much solidifying into our statute that our ports are tax exempt. So when they buy a crane or what other piece of equipment, and if they lease that back out to a contractor within that port site, that equipment will not be taxed. Now, if that equipment is sold or the property happens to be sold, whoever buys it, of course, is going to pay the taxes on it. But as long as the port owns it, it will be tax exempt. With our ports in our budget, we did get $10.4 million, which was great. I remember a time, and I'm sure the rest of the legislators here do as well, when our ports were getting like $350,000 or $3 million, not much, and we are now getting $10.4 million. Ports are important to our governor, and he has, again, made that a priority with our infrastructure. We did put back, all of us have been inundated with the floods, right? Everybody's kind of tired of rain, and we have seen what's happening in our community with our floods. In our budget, we put back $10.8 million to MoDOT for road funds for flood-related expenses, another $6 million to the Department of Public Safety for flood-related expenses. We also, I'll just go over a few other budget highlights. I do want to leave some left for Representative McGurl to talk about. For education, we also, for the third year in a row, fully funded the foundation formula. We put a total of additional, it was increased, K through 12 education is increased by $116 million. With that, total in the foundation formula of $3.94 billion in funding. We also had some funding for, let me look here real quick. $108 million in funding for transportation expenses for our local school districts, and it includes a $3 million increase for the Parents as Teachers program. In infrastructure and economic development, besides what I talked about earlier, we had $10 million for major water reservoir projects, $5 million in general revenue to match federal dollars for improving rural broadband infrastructure, which is very important to our rural areas, even here in Jefferson County. $17.35 million to fund the governor's One Start initiative for economic development and customized training. $300,000 for the brand new Missouri Military Community Reinvestment Program. We tried to save some money and reorganize the Department of Economic Development across DHE, DNR, DIFP, and the Lieutenant Governor's Office. $13.5 million of the Volkswagen settlement funds appropriated to clean air projects and grants. And tourism funding is increased by $4.7 million over the FY19 funding. One other thing I want to hit on, because some of these folks are sitting in our room, it's been a hard fight for our developmental disability providers to get the funding they need. Really, really hard fight. And I know that they struggle because they can only pay so much, and they lose out on workers to other areas that can pay more. So this year, we did get 58 million in rebased rates for developmental disability providers to improve access to services. So I think it was a great session, and I'm always available. I'm around the community most of the time, so anytime you need to talk to me, if I can help in any way, please come see me, and I'll echo what Representative Gannon says, come to the Capitol. We love to see you guys at the Capitol. We're pretty busy, but we always try to make time when you're there. Thank you.
Mike, I'm afraid there is nothing left to have to do. Before we get to Representative McGurl, let me remind you again, our sponsors for our breakfast this morning, Govero Land Services, Comtree, Dobbs Tire and Auto, Mercy Jefferson, Enterprise Bank, Fortune Bank, turn my page here, Jefferson County Community Partnership, Debbie Dunnigan, Recorder of Deeds, and Sheet Metal Workers International. And now, last but not least, Mike, they didn't make you wear a beanie or anything, did they, in the Capitol? Little freshman harassment there. Yeah. Oh, that's tough. All right. Representative Mike McGurl.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of my colleagues here today for crossing everything off of my list. But first of all, I would like to thank Dr. McKinsky and the Jefferson College and the Jefferson County Growth Association and KJ Radio for putting this on today. It is an honor. This is the first time I have got to speak to this group because I was newly elected last year and my first session. And so, you know, into this, it's been a lot of a learning process, of course. You know, I kind of took Dan Shaw's advice, if you don't know what you're talking about, don't talk about it. So, so anyway, that's the policy I've tried to maintain over the session. But I would like to touch on a couple of things. I did file 3 bills this year. One dealt with CPAs, bringing the Missouri State Board of Accountancy up with the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And in addition, I had a random act of kindness day that we was going to designate. Now, those 2 bills didn't make it, but again, those will be pre-filed again this year. Now, I had a 3rd bill that dealt with correction employees. Now, that bill, it didn't make it on the House floor, but I had the opportunity to amend Senate Bill 147 with that. And what it will do, it will give the correction employees the same benefit like a police officer, judge, or any other law enforcement officer in protecting their names and addresses from DOR in addition to their vehicle that they drive, so that it just gives them a little added protection because in the district, in the 118, of course, we do have the Potosi Correctional Facility. Also, I have several constituents that live in the 118 from Jefferson and Washington that work at either the Bonne Terre facility or the Farmington facility. So I think it just gives them a added protection for their own safety and their families. So hopefully, if the governor signs the bill, you know, that'll be the question, you know, because he has till July the 14th, I believe, to either sign them or veto. So, and the only, you know, the other thing I'd like to say is, you know, being my first session, you know, it was a learning process, and you know, I learned a lot as far as legislation. And also, you know, was able to be involved in some of the legislation that did pass. So, you know, it's just like, you know, Jefferson College has quite a program for workforce development. Well, in the budget, obviously, and I know it's already been spoke about, but, you know, that should be a benefit not only for this institution, but also for colleges across Missouri in providing the workforce that's needed. You know, we have, I think I heard last week on one of the business shows, there were 7.2 million jobs that are gone unfilled, and a lot of those are skilled trade jobs. And, you know, we have this stigma a lot of times and about, you know, you got to have a 4-year degree. You know, and obviously it works for a lot of folks. It worked for me. But still, we also have we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need carpenters. And I think by having this workforce development, I think that'll give us an opportunity to get these folks, to get them employment, and a good employment. I mean, these are good paying jobs. You know, we're not talking about minimum wage jobs here. We're talking about good skilled labor jobs that they can provide for their families and just, you know, be good citizens of the community. And, you know, I'd like to say that, you know, I really appreciate, you know, being able to serve as a state representative for this district. You know, it was kind of, you know, it was new to me. I wasn't new to what they do because I had served as a collector of revenue in Washington County for 24 years before I was elected state representative. And in addition, I am a certified public accountant. I have my own practice, still do. And so, you know, jobs, I see it with my business clients. You know, they're looking for employees. And if we don't do something to provide these employers with good employees that know how to work, know how to do the job, and will show up and do the work, you know, we're going to be in a world of hurt, I think, in future years. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming today. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you, and I look forward to not being the low man on the totem pole in 2 years.
Well, we have to get through another election, then we'll take care of that problem. We're also pleased to have with us today several staff representatives from our national office holders, and I'll ask them to come forward to give us a brief update of what's going on in Washington, D.C. And we'll start with Jennifer Hoskins, who's representative for Senator Roy Blunt.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me be here today on behalf of Senator Blunt. The Senate is in session this week, so he certainly sends his regards that he can't be here. And believe it or not, some of the things that you all have spoke about, we're actually working on too as well in the Senate. So just for those that may not be familiar with what the senator sits on his committees, he is on the Committee on Appropriations. He is the chairman of the subcommittee on the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and Related Agencies. He's on the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. He is chairman of the Rules Committee, and he is also on the Select Committee of Intelligence, which, don't ask me, I don't know anything about it. They don't let staff go into those meetings. So, also, Representative Ruth spoke on some of the disaster things that they were working on. The Congress has also worked on it. I think, Jim, I don't want to take away everything from you, so, but a disaster bill was signed into law last month, includes funding to repair waterways infrastructure, aid repair of local levees that were breached in Missouri and elsewhere. I'm sure Jim's also going to be talking about it a little more, so I won't take it all away from him. Senator Blunt has also worked on initiatives to bring new economic investment to areas that need it the most, and that's through the New Markets Tax Credit Program and the Opportunity Zones Program. In Missouri alone, there's 161 areas that have been designated Opportunity Zones, making them eligible for new investment incentives under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Also in March, Senator Blunt introduced the Bipartisan New Market Tax Credit Extension Act, which would make those new market tax credits permanent. Also, just to kind of, Representative McGraw, when you were talking about the workforce, and the issues of addressing that skills gap, the Senator Blunt has also been working on that. When he became chairman of the Labor HHS Appropriations Subcommittee in 2016, he started to fund the apprenticeship programs as a priority, and so far that program has brought in, there's been $90 million in resources to that, and Missouri has received $2.9 million for apprenticeships programs, and we anticipate that additional resources will reach Missouri this year as well. Senator Blunt also continues to work on veterans and military spouse employment issues. So a lot of times whenever the military members when they moved, it's hard on the spouses too as well. And so Senator Blunt has discussed the need to support veterans and military spouses who are pursuing those careers in private sector jobs. So the Senate will be considering the National Defense Authorization Act beginning this week, and under that bill, it makes it easier for military spouses to transport their licenses, and there's a few other things that go into that as well. The opioid crisis also continues to impact all parts of the state. If you haven't heard, in March, the Department of Health and Human Services announced that Missouri will receive $9.6 million in state opioid response grant funding. This was the first of 2 grant announcements expected this year, which are funded from the $1.5 billion for state opioid response grants that Senator Blunt included in the 2019 Labor HHS Appropriations Bill. We also, if you know Senator Blunt, you know that he has worked tirelessly on mental health issues, and he continues to do that. He, in March, he introduced the Excellence in Mental Health and Addiction Treatment Expansion Act, which would expand on the bill that he had introduced and became law in 2014, the Excellence in Mental Health and Addiction Treatment Act. So, and Missouri was one of those, it included a pilot program of which Missouri was one of the 8 states to participate in that pilot program. And Senator Blunt believes that over time that it will show that treating mental health like any other health will improve overall health outcomes and dramatically reduce the amount of money spent on treating other health conditions. I know that Senator Blunt has met with CompTree and they've been doing great things, and I think that they could be a real example of how mental health, when you treat it like any other health, is definitely good outcomes. Also, as Senator Ruth also mentioned, transportation. Sorry. Okay, I'm used to saying senator with Senator Blunt, so forgive me. Representative Ruth mentioned, but Congress is beginning the process of developing a new service transportation bill. The Commerce Committee, which Senator Blunt is a member of, has jurisdiction over the portion of the bill that relates to freight policy, rail, commercial, motor vehicle regulations, and highway safety. Just this week, the committee started reauthorization process by holding its first hearing with DOT officials. There's several priorities that Senator Blunt will include in that bill, and one is increasing the support for intermodal and multimodal connections, something that could benefit projects like the Jefferson County Port Development. Also, Senator Blunt has also voiced his support also for the Rocheport Bridge and has talked personally with the Secretary of Transportation about this as well. And that is, I hope I saved you a little bit, Jim and Donna. But if our office can ever be an assistant and Senator Blunt can be helpful, please feel free to reach out to our office. Thank you.
This is the 2019 Jefferson County Growth Association Legislative Breakfast, and you are listening to it on KJFF Radio 1400. We'll continue on now with our federal office holders, and we'll ask Donna Hickman, Representative for Representative Jason Smith, come forward.
It is my great pleasure to be here this morning representing Congressman Jason Smith, who the 8th district he represents includes the folks in southern Jefferson County. And there's so much going on in Washington, D.C. Let me hit on a few of the projects he's involved in and also ways we can help you navigate the federal government. 2 weeks ago, Congressman Smith visited the southern border of the United States and saw for himself the humanitarian and security crisis. It was worse, he said, than he imagined. He believes Congress needs to act now to provide the personnel, technology, and infrastructure that border agents need. The congressman continues to work to ensure the Corps of Engineers is being responsible to the citizens of DeSoto impacted by flooding along Joachim Creek. Last year, I told you how Congressman Smith had pressed the Corps of Engineers to address the flood concerns, and now a study of their floodplain has just been released by the Corps. The congressman is a sponsor of the House version of Senator Hawley's Missouri River Flood Control Prioritization Act. It makes flood control the #1 priority of the Corps of Engineers Master Manual, removes fish and wildlife as an authorized purpose, and instructs the Army Corps of Engineers to update its manual to reflect these changes within 90 days of the bill's passage into law. Last year, Congressman Smith sponsored the bill to create a national park in St. Genevieve, and Congress approved. The National Park Service expects to establish this park later this year. Congressman Smith voted in favor of H.R. 2940 to extend the program of block grants for states to provide temporary assistance for needy families and related programs through September 30th of 2019, and the measure passed the House. Congressman Smith is a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, which handles all revenue coming into the United States, and is also a member of the House Budget Committee. He has 5 district offices, and the Farmington office handles casework and issues for that area of Jefferson County that he represents in the 8th Congressional District. Jefferson County residents can call the congressman for help with issues that involve a federal agency, and so far in 2019, we have worked on cases for Jefferson Countyans involving the military, the IRS, the VA, Medicaid, Social Security, the EPA, the Corps of Engineers, and immigration. In addition, high school juniors may contact the congressman to apply for nominations to any one of the nation's service academies, and the deadline for those applications is October 31st of 2019. Congressman Smith is in the midst of planning his annual agriculture tour set for July and August, when he will visit farms and farm-related businesses in the 30 counties he serves in the 8th Congressional District. It is always our pleasure to offer an update on the Congressman's activities, and we would encourage any of our Jefferson County constituents with questions or concerns to contact our office in Farmington and visit jasonsmith.house.gov. Thank you.
There probably isn't anything left, is there, Jim? No. Our final presenter this morning is Jim McNichols, representative for Representative Blaine Luetkemeyer.
The joys of going last. I promise I won't be too long, everybody. My name is Jim McNichols. I represent Congressman Luetkemeyer. The 3rd Congressional District, for those who don't know, encompasses kind of the middle part of Jefferson County, south of Arnold, all the way down to the northern outskirts. We have northern Festus, and then over to High Ridge, kind of like that. That's a good description, isn't it? But happy to be here. I'd like to thank Dr. Ray and KJEF for sponsoring this event. But thank all of you for being here. It's nice to see such an engaged group interested in public policy and what's going on the state and national level. So that's very important. Couple things I'm just going to hit on real quick that Jennifer kind of touched on HR 2157. That was the disaster aid supplemental that Congress was finally able to get passed. We did vote in support of that. A couple things just to highlight. That bill does include hundreds of millions of dollars specifically to go to USDA and the Corps of Engineers to provide relief, also some money for flood insurance, and some waiving of some requirements that allow people to get the money that they need back. One thing that we didn't talk about that I think is going to be very important, the planting season was greatly impacted this year. There was, I think, estimates that perhaps maybe 40% of the actual annual crop is actually in the ground before the flooding really hit. So I think that's going to impact us down the road in terms of commodity prices. So that's something I think everybody needs to be aware of. And so we're going to try and provide some relief on that, but that's going to be something. So when you go to the grocery store and you start seeing the price of beef go up and corn and everything, that's going to be, I think, an unfortunate impact that there's nothing we can do anything about. So something to keep aware of. In terms of some things that the Congressman's working on, we are a co-sponsor of HR 1994. It's called the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Act of 2019. And I won't bore you with the details, but it's basically a bill that makes some changes to 401k rules and retirement rules to make it a little easier for transfers and things like that. And if anybody wants that information, I'd be happy to share that with them. But we're a co-sponsor on that. Some other things that we're working on. We are a co-sponsor of the Rural Health Clinics Modernization Act, which is for some of our smaller communities. Some of their clinics and the healthcare facilities that they have in these communities are needing some help in terms of modernizing and bringing them up to speed, in terms of internet and those types of things. So we're happy to be a sponsor of that. The congressman, for those who don't know, his background is in banking, and so the congressman spends a lot of time working on, he's a member of financial services, so working on a variety of different rules, specifically focused on community banking, which is his background, for some of the smaller and mid-sized community banks, working with them to try and make life a little easier from a regulatory perspective. Some other things, we are in the middle of appropriation season, and as part of that, the congressman is very focused on advocating for some of our priorities. In particular, the 3rd Congressional District has a lot of small to mid-size manufacturers, fabricators, and other types of businesses that provide a variety of services and products to Boeing in particular. So we're very keen on making sure that we advocate for the F-15 and the F-18 lines, as well as other products that are provided to the military. NIH is also another big priority of the congressman, in addition to, it's been mentioned here multiple times, but workforce development, making sure that our community colleges and those other agencies that provide that kind of training for workers going into the 21st century have the resources they need to get the training that they need to get the jobs of the future. One thing I will mention that's not something that Congress is working on directly, but I don't know if anybody's been following it, but the president has made a priority of workforce development, and his daughter has been working with the Secretary of Commerce, and they have put together, in working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies and others, have put together a program where they have secured commitments from companies to provide something like 10 million opportunities for apprenticeships and other types of training opportunities to increase the ability of workers to advance in their careers, which I think is amazing and something to be very proud of. Let's see, just going through my notes here. We are, another bill that we're a co-sponsor of is HR 2174. We were talking about flooding and flood control. 2174 is a bill to remove fish and wildlife as an authorized purpose for the management of the Missouri River and to make flood control the highest priority. I think it's a companion bill to Senator Hawley's bill. So we're working on that with them. That's about it. If folks are going to be traveling to Washington, D.C., like what everybody else has said, we're more than happy to work with them on tours, arranging tours at the White House or the Capitol. And then if you have any issues come up, this was mentioned before, we work on a variety of cases, whether it's immigration, Social Security, VA, getting benefits for folks, or if folks are having trouble getting their benefits, we're more than happy to work with them on that. So that's about it. Thanks again, Ray. Appreciate it.
Well, as you can see, there's a great deal going on our behalf, both in Jefferson City and Washington, D.C. So let's give our presenters another round of applause. Again, I want to thank our sponsors for today: Governor Land Services, Comtree, Dobbs Tire and Auto, Mercy Jefferson, Enterprise Bank, Fortune Bank, Jefferson County Community Partnership, Debbie Dunnigan, Recorder of Deeds, and Sheet Metal Workers International for providing not only today's breakfast, but the opportunity to bring all this to you. Thank you to KJF Radio and to JCTV. And if you missed part of this, you can go back on both of our websites and catch part or all of today's presentation. So thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. And let's work hard for another great legislative year in 2020. Thank you.